नमस्ते एवरीवन, बोलिए सत्य सनातन वैदिक धर्म की जय। आई एम रियली सॉरी, आज हम लेट हो गए। अब फिर से स्टार्ट करते हैं गाइस। हम द शंकर स्कूल ऑफ वेदांता पढ़ रहे हैं एंड उसमें योगाचार एपिस्टेमोलॉजी कर रहे हैं। वी स्टॉप्ड इन बिटवीन यस्टरडे क्योंकि टाइम नहीं था। अब हम वहीं से दोबारा स्टार्ट करते हैं। द योगाचारास और आइडियलिस्टिक बुद्धिस्ट take this cue from the above mentioned Sautantric Buddhists and say that since we can come into touch with knowledge and knowledge alone, we can come into touch with knowledge and knowledge alone. What is the use of admitting an external world of objects as the data for sensation determining our knowledge? कि अगर हम नॉलेज से ही नॉलेज को टच करते हैं तो देर इज नो पॉइंट ऑफ पुटिंग द वर्ल्ड ऑब्जेक्ट्स इनटू दैट. You say that sensation are copies of external world, but why should you say that they copy and not that they alone exist? Sensation is a copy of external world, yes. क्योंकि जब हम देख रहे हैं, जब मैं आगे अपना फोन देख रहा हूँ लाइव जाते हुए, तो मैं तो उसकी कॉपी ही देख रहा हूँ ना. इफ यू रिमेंबर के हाउ ऑप्टिक्स वर्क इन ह्यूमंस, राइट? We never come into touch with objects in themselves. These can only be grasped by us simultaneously with knowledge of them. They must therefore be the same as knowledge. Saho palamba niyamat abhedo nilata dhyo. For it is in and through knowledge that external objects can appear to us, and without knowledge we are not in touch with the so-called external objects. So it is knowledge which is self-apparent in itself, that projects itself in such a manner as to appear as referring to other external objects. We all acknowledge that in dreams there are no external objects, but even there we have knowledge. The question why then, if there are no external objects, there should be so much diversity in the form of knowledge, is no better solved by the assumption of an external world. For in such an assumption, the external objects have to be admitted as possessing the infinite diverse powers of diversely affecting and determining our knowledge. That being so, it may rather be said that in the beginningless series of flowing knowledge and preceding knowledge moments, by virtue of their inherent specific qualities, determine the succeeding knowledge moments. Thus, knowledge alone exists. The projection of an external world is an illusion of knowledge brought about by beginningless potencies of desire, vasana, associated with it. जो external world है, that is projection of vasana. That is what they are saying. The preceding knowledge determines the succeeding one, and that another, and so on. Knowledge, pleasure, pain, etc. are not qualities requiring a permanent entity as soul in which they may inhere, but are the various forms in which knowledge appears. Even the cognition I perceive a blue thing is but a form of knowledge, and this is often erroneously interpreted as referring to a permanent knower. Though the cognition are all passing and momentary, yet as long as the series continues to be the same, as in the case of one person, says Devadatta, the phenomena of memory, recognition, etc., can happen in the succeeding moments, for these are evidently illusory cognitions so far as they refer the permanence of the objects believed to have been perceived before, or for things or knowledge moments, whatever they may be, are destroyed the next moment after the birth. इसमें जस्ट ये कहने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि जब भी हम किसी चीज़ को कॉग्नाइज करते हैं, हम इसे किस चीज़ से कॉग्नाइज कर रहे हैं? अपने सेंसेस से. हमारे सेंसेस क्या नेचुरली मेड है, तो वट एवर दैट इज नेचुरली मेड, हम उस चीज़ से अपने आप को कॉग्नाइज कर पा रहे हैं. बट क्या ये सारी कॉग्निशन एक ट्रू है? नहीं. दैट इज जस्ट अ रिफ्लेक्शन ऑफ वर्ल्डली ऑब्जेक्ट्स. तो उन्होंने जस्ट ये बोला है, तो वर्ल्डली ऑब्जेक्ट्स हम आ ही कहाँ रहे हैं, जो नॉलेज आ रही है दैट इज नॉलेज टू नॉलेज ट्रांसफर हो रहा है, हम किसी चीज को छू नहीं पा रहे हैं। अगर मैं इस फोन को फोन को टच करता हूँ ऐसे, तो मेरे सेंसेस टच कर रहे हैं, मैं नहीं टच कर रहा हूँ। स्किन इज अ सेंस, टच इज अ सेंस। तो जैसा मटेरियल होगा, खुदरा मटेरियल होगा, स्मूथ होगा, कंफर्टेबल होगा या अनकंफर्टेबल होगा, ऑल दीज मटेरियल्स हम टच नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, हम बस फील कर पा रहे हैं। एंड ऑब्जेक्ट को हम टच नहीं कर पा, ऑब्जेक्ट इज स्टिल रिमेनिंग एज एन एक्सटर्नल ऑब्जेक्ट ओनली, राइट। हम बस उसकी लेयर्स बढ़ा रहे हैं, कॉपी पेस्ट कर रहे हैं। There is no permanent entity as perceiver or knower, but the knowledge moments are at once the knowledge, the knower at the known. हम एक ही बार knowledge, knower and the known बनते हैं, उसके बाद there is no more perception to it, right? This thoroughgoing idealism brushes off all references to an objective field of experience, interprets the verdict of knowledge as involving a knower and the known as mere illusory appearance, and considers the flow of knowledge as the self determining series in successive objective forms as the only truth. The Hindu school of thought, Nyaya, Sankhya, and the Mimamsa, accept the duality of soul and matter and attempt to explain the relation between the two. With the Hindu writers, it was not the practical utility of knowledge, and that was the only important thing, but the nature of knowledge and the manner in which it came into being were also inquired after and considered important. Pramana is defined by Nyaya as the collection of instruments by which unerring and undebatable knowledge comes into being. The collocation of instruments which brings about definite knowledge consists partly of consciousness, बोध, जो हमारी नॉलेज है फर्स्ट पार्टली ऑफ कॉन्शियसनेस, क्योंकि हम कॉन्शियस हैं तभी हमें वो नॉलेज मिल रही है, एंड पार्टली ऑफ मटेरियल फैक्टर्स, बोधि बोध स्वभाव, कि किस टाइप का मटेरियल है, वो मटेरियल की क्वालिटी भी तो डिफाइन करेगी। This is perception, the proper, thus in perception, the proper contact of visual sense with the object, that is jug, first brings about a non-intelligent, non-apprehensible, indeterminate consciousness, nirvikalpa. पहले तो निर्विकल्प, जो हमने सविकल्प और निर्विकल्प पढ़ा था, कि निर्विकल्प पहले इनडिटर्मिनेट कॉन्शियसनेस है, कि कॉन्शियसनेस है क्या, आप पहचान क्या पा रहे हैं इससे। देन उसके बाद सविकल्प एंड द जगनेस, घटत्व, and this later on combining with the remaining other collocations of sense contact etc produces the determinate consciousness, that is savikalpa. This is a jug, right? जैसे आप सिलुएट को देख सकते हैं, सिलुएट इज निर्विकल्प, एंड अगर उसके बाद जब आप उस पर्टिकुलर इंसान को प्रॉपर देख लेंगे, समझ लेंगे क्या है, दैट इज सविकल्प, राइट? Agnes Ghatatva, and later combining with the remaining other collocations of sense contact, etc., produces the determinate solution. This is a jug. The existence of this determinate state of consciousness as a factor in bringing about the determinate consciousness cannot of course be perceived, but its existence can be inferred from the fact that that if the perceiver were not already in possession of the qualifying factor Visheshana Jnana as Jagnas, he could not have comprehended the qualified object Vishishta Buddhi, the Jug, that is the object which possesses Jagness. In inference, Anumana, knowledge of the Linga, takes part, and in Upamana, the sight of similarity with other material conglomerations. In the case of the Buddhists, knowledge itself was regarded as pramana. Even by those who admitted the existence of objective world, right knowledge was called pramana because it was of the same form as the external object it presented, and it was by the form of knowledge, example blue, that we could apprehend that the external object was also blue. Knowledge does not determine the external world, but simply enforces our conviction about the external world. नॉलेज डिटर्मिन नहीं करता एक्सटर्नल वर्ल्ड, लेकिन वो कन्विक्शन करता है कि एक्सटर्नल वर्ल्ड कैसा है. जैसे एक्सटर्नल वर्ल्ड आप जैसे द एनवायरनमेंट इन विच आई एम डूइंग द लाइव, इस केस में भी द एक्सटर्नल वर्ल्ड इज ये फोन, लाइट एंड ऑल द एनवायरनमेंट विच इज देयर. पीछे का एनवायरनमेंट मैंने जो अलग चेंज किया हुआ ड्यू टू सर्टेन रीजंस. नाउ ये सारा जस्ट एक it just tells the conviction कि क्या है, but it is not the external world. ये नहीं external world, ये हमारे senses देख रहे हैं, we are getting an image for that. So far as knowledge leads us to form our convictions of the external world, it is pramana. And so far as it determines our attitude towards the external world, it is pramana phala. The question how knowledge is generated had little importance with them, but how the knowledge we could form conviction of the external world was the most important thing. Knowledge was called pramana because it was the means by which we could form conviction. Adhyaya Vyasa. Was called Pramana because it was the means by which we could form the conviction about the external world. कि हम ये देख पा रहे हैं कि external world है कैसा, what are the properties of external world, right? Nyaya sought to answer the question how knowledge was generated in us, but could not understand what knowledge was not, a mere phenomena like any other objective phenomena, but thought that though as a guna quality it was external like other gunas, yet it was associated with ourself as a result of collocations like any other happenings in the material world. Pramana does not necessarily bring to us new knowledge. Anadi gata digantara, as Buddhists demanded. Pramana does not necessarily bring to us new knowledge. Pramana does not necessarily bring to us new knowledge. मतलब हम पुरानी knowledge से भी तो प्रमाण दे सकते हैं ना. That is the proof. कि आग में हाथ डालने से जल जाता है हाथ. That is the old knowledge. We might not have experienced it, but we have just seen कि अगर हम हाथ अगर आग के पास just रखते तो it gives a heating sensation, right? As Buddhists demanded, but whensoever there were collocations of pramana, knowledge was produced, no matter whether the object was previously unknown or known. Even the knowledge of known things may be repeated if there be suitable collocations. Knowledge, like any other physical effect, is produced whenever the cause of it, namely the pramana collocation, is present. Categories which are merely mental, such as class, samanya, inherence, samavaya, etc., were considered as having as much independent existence as the atom of the four elements. The phenomena of the rise of knowledge in the soul was thus conceived to be as much a phenomena as the turning of the color of jug by fire from red to black. The elements of indeterminate consciousness was believed to be becoming with the sense contact, the object, etc., to produce the determinate consciousness. There was no other subtler form of movement than the molecular. Such a movement, brought about by a certain collocations of things, ended in a certain result, phala. Gyan, knowledge, was thus the result of certain united collocations, samagri, and their movements. Example, contact of manas with soul, of manas with the senses, of the senses with objects, etc. Right? Gyan, knowledge, was thus the result of certain united collocations, samagri, and their movements. Collocations जो अलग अलग factors हमें दिखाई देते हैं, and samagri, that is their movements. Example, contact of manas with soul, of manas with senses, and the senses with objects. Senses with objects जैसे हम छू पा रहे हैं, right? This confusion rendered it impossible to understand the real philosophical distinction between the knowledge and an external event of the objective world. Nyaya thus fails to explain the cause of the origin of knowledge and its true relations with the objective world. Pleasure, pain, willing, etc., were regarded as qualities which belong to the soul and the soul itself was regarded as qualities, entities which could be apprehended directly, but was inferred as that in which the qualities of jnana, sukha, pleasure, etc. inhered. Qualities had independent existence as much as substances, but when any new substance were produced, the qualities rushed forward and inhered in them. It is very probable that in Nyaya, the cultivation of the art of inference was originally preeminent, and metaphysics was deduced later by an application of the inferential method, which gave the introspective method but little scope for its application, so that inference came in to explain even perception. Example, this is a jug since it has jugness, and the testimony of personal psychological experience was taken only as a supplement to corroborate the result arrived at by inference and was not used to criticize it. न्याय मंजरी, ये न्याय मंजरी का लिया है, इसे हम दोबारा पढ़ते हैं. क्वालिटीज एड इंडिपेंडेंट एग्जिस्टेंस एज मच एज सब्सटेंस. क्योंकि फोन है, फोन कौन सा है, क्या क्वालिटीज है, क्या उसका मटेरियल है, दैट इज इंडिपेंडेंट. फोन अलग है, सब्सटेंस मटेरियल्स अलग हैं, तभी उसके प्राइस अलग अलग होते हैं, राइट. But when any new substance were produced, the qualities rushed forward and inhered in it. Now technically जब फोन बन गया, उसका प्राइस टैग डिसाइड हो गया, तो उसके बाद all these materials were inhered in it. It is very probable that in Nyaya, the cultivation of the art of inference was originally preeminent, and metaphysics was deduced later by an application of the inferential method, which gave the introspective method but little scope for its application. Right? Nyaya, it is very probable that Nyaya, the cultivation of the art of inference, because न्याय में ही मैक्सिमम आपको इन्फरेंस देखने को मिलता है, how it is originally preeminent, and metaphysics was deduced later by an application of the inferential method, right, which gave the introspective method but little scope for its application, so that inference came into explain even perception. Example, this is a jug since it has jugness, and the testimony of personal psychological experience was taken only as a supplement to corroborate the result arrived at by inference, and was not used to criticize it. Right? उसको corroboration में लिया जाता है, उसको criticize करने नहीं लिया जाता है, ये सारी testimonies को. Sankhya understood the difference between the knowledge and the material events. But so far as knowledge consisted in being the copy of external things, क्योंकि knowledge is जैसा कि बोला कि is the copy of external things, it could not be absolutely different from the objects themselves. तो objects themselves से कभी different नहीं होता है. It was even then an invisible, translucent sort of thing, devoid of weight and grossness, such as the external objects pose. But the fact that it copies those gross objects makes it evident that knowledge had eventually the same substances, though in a subtler form, as that of which the object were made. But though the matter of knowledge, which assumed the form of objects with which it come to touch, was probably thus a subtler combination of the same elementary substances of which matter was made up. Yet there was in it another element, viz. Intelligence, which at once distinguishes it as utterly different from material combination. This element of intelligence is indeed different from the substance or content of the knowledge itself, for the element of intelligence is like the stationary light, the self, which illuminates the crowding, bustling knowledge, which is incessantly changing its form in accordance with the object with which it comes into touch. This light of intelligence is the same that finds its manifestation as consciousness as the I. The changeless entity emits all the fluctuations of the changeful procession of knowledge. इस चीज को आप ऐसे समझ सकते हैं, एक मटेरियल है, वो मटेरियल के अलग अलग प्रॉपर्टीज हैं. तो हमारे नॉलेज क्या कह रही है कि एक मटेरियल है, ये नॉलेज है, एंड मटेरियल के अलग अलग मटेरियल्स हैं, जब आप छू के वो मटेरियल को चेक करते हो फिर देखते हो एंड यू आर सीइंग द डिफरेंट मटेरियल्स, ये नॉलेज है। देयर इज अनदर नॉलेज जो इस मटेरियल को डिस्टिंग्विश कर पा रही है। अगर आपके मटेरियल की डिस्टिंक्शन नहीं रहेगी तो फिर आप आइडेंटिफाई कैसे कर पाएंगे कि विच मटेरियल इज सेम विच इज नॉट। अगर आप आइडेंटिफाई कर पा रहे हैं कि विच मटेरियल इज सेम विच इज नॉट, तो इन दैट वेरी पर्टिकुलर केस, सिर्फ उसी केस में जो चेंज है वो आप आइडेंटिफाई कर पाएंगे। दैट इज कॉल्ड आईनेस, यानी कि आप ईगोइज्म भी बोल सकते हो या फिर मैं अहंकार भी बोल सकते हो, राइट। तो उससे आप डिफरेंशिएट कर पाते हैं। जैसे वन इज द नॉलेज के, जैसे डिफरेंशिएटिंग मैटर बहुत ज़रूरी होता है इन टर्म्स के क्या सही क्या गलत, राइट। इफ देयर समथिंग दैट इज राइट इट्स राइट, इफ देयर समथिंग रॉन्ग दैट इज रॉन्ग। तो उसको डिफरेंशिएट करने के लिए देयर आर सर्टेन आपके अंदर सोच होनी चाहिए टू डिफरेंशिएट दैट, उसको बोला गया। How this element of light, which is foreign to the substance of knowledge, relates itself to knowledge, and how knowledge itself takes it up into itself and appears as conscious, is the most difficult point of Sankhya epistemology and metaphysics. The substance of knowledge copies the external world, and this copy shape of knowledge and this copy shape of knowledge is again intelligized by the pure intelligence, Purusha, when it appears as conscious. The forming of buddhi shape of knowledge is thus the pramana, instrument and process of knowledge. And the validity or invalidity of any of these shapes is criticized by the later shape of knowledge, not by the external object. Svata pramanya and svata apramanya. Buddhi shape of knowledge is thus the pramana, instrument and process of knowledge, and the validity or invalidity of any of these shapes is criticized by the later shapes of knowledge and not by external objects. तो उसका जो experience है वो हमारे according होगा कि whether we are accepting that same source of knowledge or not, right? The pramanya, however, can lead to prama or right knowledge only when it is intelligized by the Purusha. The Purusha comes in touch with Buddhi not by the ordinary means of physical contact but by what may be called an inexplicable transcendental contact. It is the transcendental influence of Purusha that sets in motion the original Prakriti in Sankhya metaphysics. And it is the same transcendental touch, call it Yogyata according to Vachaspati or Samyoga according to Bhikshu, of the transcendental entity of Purusha that transforms the non intelligent state of Buddhi into consciousness. In physics, but by what we may call inexplicable transcendental contact. It is transcendent influence of Purusha that sets in motion the original prakriti of Sankhya metaphysics. ठीक है, जब आप ये मेडिटेशन की बात की जा रही है, जब आप मेडिटेट करेंगे, जब आपकी ट्रांसेंडेंटल कंडीशन बनेगा, in that very particular case you will get to know the basic knowledge of buddhi, and buddhi comes in contact with Purusha. Sankhya was, however, the realist who admitted the external world and regarded the forms as all due to copy, all stamped as such upon the translucent substance sattva, which could assume the shape of the objects. But Sankhya was also transcendentalist in this, that it did not think like Nyaya, that the akar of knowledge was all that knowledge had to show. It held that there was a transcendent element which shone forth the knowledge and made it conscious. With Nyaya, there was no distinction between the shaped buddhi and the intelligence, and that being so, consciousness was almost like a physical event. With Sankhya, forever, so far as the content of the shape manifested in consciousness were concerned, it was indeed a physical event. But so far as impure intelligized elements of consciousness was concerned, it was a whole transcendent affair beyond the scope and province of physics. The rise of consciousness was thus at once both transcendent and physical. The minimalist Prabhakara agreed with Nyaya in general as regards the way in which the objective world and sense contact induced knowledge in us, but it treated knowledge as a unique phenomena which at once revealed itself, the knower and the known. We are not concerned with physical collocations, for whatever these may be, it is knowledge which reveals things. The direct apprehension that should be called the pramana. Pramana, in this sense, is the same as pramiti or prama, the phenomena of apprehension. Pramana may also indeed mean the collocation so far as they induce the prama. For prama or right knowledge is never produced. It always exists, but it manifests itself different under different circumstances. यानी कि प्रमा राइट नॉलेज बोलते हैं, तो जो राइट नॉलेज है वो कभी प्रोड्यूस नहीं होती, तो वो ख़त्म भी नहीं होगी. इट वॉज ऑलवेज देयर. एंड इसको इसलिए बोला गया है ये कि ये सिर्फ मैनिफेस्ट करती है. इट विल नेवर बी प्रोड्यूस, नाइदर बी डिस्ट्रॉयड. वो जस्ट मैनिफेस्ट करती है अलग अलग तरीकों में. जैसे ही आपको इफ़ यू रियलाइज गॉड, तो हाउ विल यू रियलाइज गॉड? यू विल बी जैसे रियलाइज बीइंग्स होते हैं, उसका कोई पर्टिकुलर वे नहीं है, क्योंकि वो अलग अलग तरीके से जो ज्ञान है वो अपने आप को ढाल रहा है किसी और फॉर्म्स में. The validity of knowledge means the conviction or the specific attitude that is generated in us with reference to the objective world. This validity is manifested with the rise of knowledge, and it does not await the verdict of any later experience in the objective field, sambadhan. Right? Knowledge is nirvikalpa, indeterminate, means the whole knowledge of the object and not merely a non-sensible, hypothetical, indeterminate class notion as Nyaya holds. The servikalpa, determinate knowledge, only re-establishes the knowledge, thus formed by relating it with other objects as represented by memory. Sankhya considers a nirvikalpa as a dim knowledge of the first moment of consciousness, which when it becomes clear in the next moment is called savikalpa. Right? Prabhakara rejected the Sankhya conception of a dual element in consciousness as involving a transcendent intelligence, chitta, and a material part, the buddhi, but it regarded consciousness as a unique thing which by itself in one flash represented both the knower and the known. The validity of knowledge did not depend upon its faithfulness in representing of indicating pradarshakatva, external object, but upon the force that all direct apprehensions, anubhuti, has been prompting us to action in the external world. Knowledge is thus a complete and independent unit in all its self revealing aspects. But what the knowledge was in itself, apart from its self revealing character, Prabhakara did not inquire. Kumarila declared that Jnana, knowledge, was a movement brought about the activity of the self, which resulted in producing consciousness, ज्ञातता, of objective thing. कुमारिला कहता है कि नॉलेज एक मूवमेंट थी जो activity of self which resulted in producing consciousness. Because of that only you will get your own consciousness, right? Jnana itself cannot be perceived, but can only be inferred as the movement necessary for producing the gyatata or consciousness of things. Movement with Kumarila was not a mere atomic vibration, but was a non-sensuous transcendental operation of which vibration was sometimes the result. Jnana was a movement and not the result of causal operation of Nyaya, as Nyaya supposed. Nyaya would not also admit any movement on the part of the self, but it would hold that when the self is possessed of certain qualities such as desire, etc., it becomes an instrument for the accomplishment of physical movement. Kumarila accords the same self validity of knowledge that Prabhakara gives. Later knowledge or by experience is not endowed with any special quality which should decide as to the validity of the knowledge of the previous movement. For what is called sambadi or later testimony of experience is but later knowledge and nothing more. यानी कि जो हम जो बात कर रहा है और जो अपना एक्सपीरियंस बता रहा है वो पहले संवादी था, नॉलेज था, बाद में इट इज नॉलेज, उससे ज्यादा कुछ नहीं है. The self is not revealed in knowledge or external object, but we can know it by a mental perception of self consciousness. It is the movement of this self in presence of certain collocations, circumstances leading to cognition of thing that is called jnana. Here Kumarila distinguishes knowledge as movement from knowledge as objective consciousness. Knowledge as movement was beyond sense perception and could only be inferred. The idealist tendency of Vijnanvada Buddhism, Sankhya and Mimamsa, was manifest in its attempt as establishing the unique character of knowledge as being that with which alone we are in touch. But Vijnanvada denies the external world and thereby did violence to the testimony of knowledge. Sankhya admitted the external world but created a gulf between the content of knowledge and pure existence. Prabhakara ignored this difference and was satisfied with the introspective assertion that knowledge was such a unique thing that it revealed with itself the knower and the known. Kumarila, however, admitted a transcendental element of movement as being the cause of our objective consciousness, but regarded this as being separate from self. But the question remained unsolved as to why, in spite of unique character of knowledge, knowledge could relate itself to the knowledge of object. How far the world of external objects or the knowledge could be regarded as absolute true. Hitherto judgments were only relative, either referring to one's being prompted to the objective world, to the faithfulness of the representation of objects, the suitability of fulfilling our requirements, or to verification by later uncontradicted experience. But no inquiry was made whether any absolute judgment about the ultimate truth of knowledge and matter could be made at all. That which appeared was regarded as the real, but the question was not asked whether there was anything which could be regarded as absolute truth, the basis of all appearance, and the unchangeable reality. This philosophy and philosophical inquiry had the most wonderful charm for Hindu mind. इसमें इसको थोड़ा डिटेल आउट करते हैं कि the idealist tendency of Vijnanvada Buddhism, Sankhya and Mimamsa, was manifest in its attempt to establish the unique character of knowledge as being that which alone we are in touch. यानी कि वो ये कह रहे हैं कि जो नॉलेज है वो वही है जो हम टच कर सकते हैं, जो हम टच नहीं कर सकते दैट इज नॉट नॉलेज. इन अ सेंस अगर हम बुक पढ़ रहे हैं, वी आर रीडिंग द बुक, दिस इज नॉलेज. मैं फोन को टच कर सकता हूँ, दिस इज अगेन नॉलेज कि मैं फोन को टच कर पा रहा हूँ. फोन क्या है, किस मटेरियल से बना है, किस कंडीशंस में बना है, दैट इज आल्सो नॉलेज. बट विज्ञानवादा denied the external world and thereby did violence to the testimony of knowledge. उन्होंने डिनाई कर दिए विज्ञानवादियों ने कि कोई एक्सटर्नल वर्ल्ड है ही नहीं है. सांख्या एडमिटेड द एक्सटर्नल वर्ल्ड बट क्रिएटेड अ गल्फ बिटवीन द कंटेंट ऑफ नॉलेज एंड प्योर इंटेलिजेंस. सांख्या ने एडमिट तो किया कि एक्सटर्नल वर्ल्ड है, देयर इज एक्सटर्नल वर्ल्ड. फोन कहाँ से बना है, फोन इज एक्सटर्नल वर्ल्ड ओनली, राइट. फोन एक्सटर्नल वर्ल्ड है, बट एक डिफरेंस है बीच में, गल्फ, दैट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन द एक्सटर्नल वर्ल्ड and the content of knowledge and pure intelligence. What is pure intelligence? जो हमने पहले पढ़ा था, the difference between the real thing and unreal thing, right? Prabhakar ignored this difference and was satisfied with the introspective assertion that knowledge was such a unique thing that it revealed with itself the knower and the known. The knower मुझे and the known, कि फोन है क्या है whatsoever, एंड इट इज itself मतलब कि अपने आप ही स्वतः ज्ञान जिसे बोलते हैं. Kumarila has admitted a transcendental element of movement as being the cause of our objective consciousness, but regarded this as being separate from self. But the question remained unsolved as to why, in spite of unique character of knowledge, knowledge could relate itself to the world of objects. यानी कि knowledge, जो भी हम चीजें देख रहे हैं, जो भी हमें knowledge मिल रही है, वो worldly objects की मिल रही हैं. How far the world of external objects or the knowledge could be regarded as absolutely true. कितनी दूर तक हम उस knowledge को absolutely true देखते हैं. Hitherto judgments were only relative, either referring to one's being prompted to objective world, to the faithfulness of representation of object, the later suitability of fulfilling our requirements, or to verification by later uncontradicted experience. But no inquiry was made whether an absolute judgments about the ultimate truth of knowledge and matter could be made at all. That which appeared was regarded as the real. जो हमारे सामने दिख रहा है, that was regarded as the real, but the question was not asked whether there was anything which could be regarded as absolute truth, the basis of all appearance. यानी कि कुछ absolute truth है या नहीं, क्योंकि ये तो हम appearance के basis पे बोल रहे हैं. फोन is changing. फोन आज अब आप बैटरी हेल्थी देख लीजिए, या फिर जब मैं लाइव कर रहा हूँ तो बैटरी घटती हुई दिख रही है, तो दैट इज नॉट एब्सोल्यूट ट्रुथ, राइट. एंड द अनचेंजेबल रियलिटी, जो अब आत्मा इज अनचेंजेबल, दैट इज व्हाई आई एम एबल टू सी. अगर आप एक स्टेशन पे खड़े हैं, स्टेशन पे खड़े होकर आप ट्रेन देख पा रहे हैं, आप स्टेशनरी है तभी तो आप ट्रेन को जाते हुए देख सकते हैं. अगर आप भी मूव कर रहे होते उसी स्पीड पे, तो ट्रेन आपको स्थिर दिखती, राइट. This philosophical inquiry had the most wonderful charm for the Hindu mind. So these philosophical inquiries and these debates was something that was very important for us, और हम इसी पे philosophies को debate करते थे. This finishes up with the epistemological and the debates. आगे हम पढ़ेंगे वेदांता लिटरेचर. वेदांता लिटरेचर के बाद हम वेदांता ऑफ गॉड पादा पढ़ेंगे. लिटरेचर में क्या क्या लिखे गए हैं, that will be an important task tomorrow. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I hope you like this short video. Hope you like the series. Hope you are liking. I'm trying my level best के रोज आऊँ. आगे भी शायद एक गैप आने वाला है जिसमें I will be traveling, तो उसमें देखते हैं मैं कैसे मैनेज करता हूँ. आज के लिए इतना ही. I'll continue tomorrow जो हम वेदांता लिटरेचर पे हम कंटिन्यू करेंगे. Hope you like this video. If you like this video, please kindly like, share and subscribe my channel. Jai Shri Ram.